rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Well, the final day of the SCOTUS term came today, and they issued what I think is one of the top opinions that they could have gotten wrong. Let's see, there was Dred Scott decision. That was wrong. There was the Roe v. Wade decision. That was wrong. And now there's the Trump versus Barbara decision, which is also wrong. I can only hope that it doesn't take 40 or 50 years for things to get overturned. That's assuming that it even gets overturned by the courts. Now, there are some things that can be done now that the decision has been made. There are a couple things that can be done. And in fact, one of the justices, Kavanaugh, alluded to it. And we'll get into that here in just a minute. Plus, I'm going to go back through the entire case, meaning I'm going to show you why SCOTUS was wrong. We got Roberts, folks. We got Roberts. I mean, that's literally it. John Roberts has no balls. Okay? John Roberts has no balls. And the reason being is because he didn't want to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court that basically told all of these illegal aliens who came here and dropped babies that, no, all of you guys have to just go back. See, he didn't want to do that because John Roberts has no balls. John Roberts wants the court to issue narrow opinions. You've seen his opinions. He is a trash Chief Justice. And he has put his thumb on the scale because he doesn't want to be seen as the court rocking the boat. And that's just how it goes. Well, folks, we're going to have to figure out a way around it. And I got to tell you, the way around it, believe it or not, is through Congress. And I'm not exactly sure whether or not the Congress is going to have enough oomph right now to be able to do this. But I do have something on that here in just a minute. But first, let's go ahead and get things kicked off here with the Pledge of Allegiance. One of our fan favorites of the Pledge. Tonight, we have none other than Coco, Cam, and Sean up for tonight's pledge. So if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one, like me. Place your hand over your heart and follow along with Coco, Cam, and, of course, Sean as they recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and I thank you, Coco, Cam, and, of course, John, for that wonderful rendition of the Pledge. If you would like to hear your rendition of the Pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself reciting or performing the Pledge in your style. Take that audio file, video file, whatever kind of file, and attach it to an email. Then send that email off to me by sending it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online, and I will get you into the rotation. I have 24 of these. I'd like to get 2 more. I'd like to get 26 by the end of 2026. So if you haven't done so already, please get yours in. And if you use your phone to record the recitation, all you need to do is utilize the share option. That's the SHARE option, and you'll be able to take that and send it off to fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you into the rotation as quickly as possible. All right, tonight's headline sponsor is none other than the Institute on the no, it's not the Institute on the Constitution. Formerly the Institute on the Constitution, now known as The American View. Go to theamericanview.com. That's theamericanview.com and learn about our historical founding and the wonderful Constitution, all from a biblical world view. That is part of their vision. Their vision is a nation of effective and influential contributors to American government, society, and culture, prepared by educational resources that are focused on the biblical and transformative heritage of America's founding. You need to head off to theamericanview.com. Check out all of their courses, their materials. You can start by going through their U.S. Constitution course, by which you get lesson 1 for free. All you need to do is fill in your first name, last name, and your email, and you'll get lesson 1 free once you punch that button or press that button. You'll be able to learn at your own pace with the nationally recognized 100% online course. There are 12 short lessons. We're talking 15, 20 minutes long. And you'll be able to learn from our founders in terms of how this great country came to be. Once you are done with that, and you can go through many of their other courses, but they suggest that you also go and check out becoming a donator or a sponsor, a member, or perhaps even an instructor. That's right. Go ahead and leave a legacy by helping to restore the constitutional republic and prepare the future by hosting a course in your community. And that's what you do by becoming a instructor. You can lead, and here's a video that they want you to look at. It's how to become an instructor. And then also 5 tips for a successful class. Now, they are not going to leave you hanging. They also provide you with an instructor kit, or have it available, I should say. Hey, instructor kit that you can use in order to back up and supplement the wonderful course material that they have put together for you. Now, you can also go and check out their shop. Head on over to their shop. You can look at not only the Constitution course, their other educational resources, the instructor materials, and self-evident apparel, but you also have this wonderful Legacy Library. Yes, the Legacy Library has a bunch of leather products. I love leather. They have a leather Declaration of Independence, a leather Bill of Rights, a leather Magna Carta, a leather U.S. Constitution wall hanging. All of that is available, but the most important piece, I think, is this guy right here in my hot little hands. That is a leather-bound U.S. Constitution. That's right. This sexy, rounded corner book is available for you. It is, according to G, the next Stitching for Patriots. Yeah, right here. Stitching for Patriots. You can also, you also know that stitching, it's stitched with leather that's strong enough to hold together your overworked AC unit if you live in Florida, according to Free Chevy. Anyway, and they're all coming up with stitching stuff. But I digress. Let's go to 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are water and tear resistant. No cheap glue here, folks. This is stitched, and that's what they're talking about. Stitching all the way through. The leather in the pages contained within. It's got a 100-year warranty against materials and manufacturing defects, such that if you have a problem with this item, you can send it back to the manufacturer and they will either fix it or replace it for free. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved. My youngest whiskey warrior has confirmed that the information contained within will help you to study for and achieve your civics badge in Scouts, as well as your civics exam and even the naturalization test. Go to theamericanview.com, go to their shop, go to their legacy library, and you'll find it there. It is this little pocket size. You can travel with it. You can use it to prove things like I'm about to do tonight. Head on over to theamericanview.com. Check out all of their things, and I do appreciate them being a sponsor of the program. All righty, folks, let's get things kicked off. First things first. The Supreme Court upholds state bans on boys and girls sports. So basically, the courts kind of combined two cases into one, and they basically said that Idaho and West Virginia laws banning biological boys in girls' sports does not violate either the Constitution or Title IX. Now, I agree with this decision. This decision was pretty much a no-brainer. It should have been 9-0 because state law, essentially, there's nothing in the Constitution that basically says that the federal government gets to dictate what happens within the state's borders dealing with the American people. That's a strict constitutionalist interpretation. And that is how our country is supposed to work. Okay? Now, all of that being said, they pretty much just said, well, you know, equal protection clause doesn't matter because it doesn't matter. It's not a part of the situation. And then also it doesn't violate Title IX because Title IX was created in order to create women's sports when there was no women's sports. So you have male sports and women's sports. Male and female sports, biological sex. There's nothing that says in either law or the Constitution, it basically says that, yeah, you've got no problem here. They have equal protection. They have their own genderized sport. That's what it is. Okay? So, there you go. Now, that was the easiest one. I'm just going to say that was the easiest one. There also was another case. There were 4 total cases that were read today, 4 opinions. There's also an opinion with regards to election funding and election law and how much money can be put in from a political party into a campaign. And well, let's just say that one I'm a little dubious of, but again, strict constitutionalist here. There is no constitutional boundary that would stop this. They basically said that according to the FEC law, that there should be no limit allowed. So you can't cap it, and you can put in however much money you want to. So that one's a little bit of a muckety-muck mess. But there's a couple people that I blame for the last, which is the birthright citizenship. A couple people that I blame. Number one, I blame John Sauer. John Sauer, the Solicitor General, as in terms of how this thing was argued. Now, I actually had an episode that goes into how this thing was argued and my objection to how it was argued in episode 858, Sour on Sour. Well, I started that one off quite well. And let's just go ahead and take a listen. Self-praise stinks, but take a listen to me as I talk about this. Yeah. All right, let's get into it, because otherwise you know how you have that one fan of a particular sport game, whatever, maybe a special team or whatever, and you have the referees who make a call, and it's a bad call. And that one fan is standing there just fuming, spitting sparks, yelling at the screen. Because of all this? Yeah, well, that was me this morning, just about. And I'll explain to you why. So this guy is the Solicitor General. He is named D. John Sauer. And I got to tell you, there were some softballs, some hanging softballs, curveballs, whatever you want to call them. Okay. But this guy, man, he freaking missed him. He swung and a miss. It was like a swing and a miss, a swing and a miss. So his whole argument was centered completely around the 14th Amendment and completely around the phraseology subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And what he had was two main points, which was essentially that phraseology meant more than just being born within the United States as a qualifier to be a citizen of the United States. Now, up until this point, I am like all in. I am good to go on this. And he made the argument that he's like, it is allegiance and domicile. Allegiance and domicile being a factor in terms of determining citizenship. I'm all good with that. Still good. Everything's cool. All right. I'm still good. Where he failed was when they got to the arguments and questioned him on the arguments of allegiance and domicile. There was one where they were talking about, well, when has allegiance ever been a part of, the history of the United States? When was allegiance ever really a big thing? Because, they're talking about allegiances and they talk about the old English form of allegiance, whereas like, hey, just by you being born within the king's realm means that you have an allegiance to the king. It's an automatic thing. And they kept going back to this because that's where the Wong Kim Ark discussion really focused on in the beginning of the Supreme Court decision, which obviously is the biggest thing here. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of this because, again, I honestly believe that John Sauer he freaking failed. I'm sorry in this. No, I'm not. Forget that. I'm not sorry. That idiot freaking failed. He totally failed. And there is no question here as to what's going on. Because, and here's how John Roberts decided or put this into the opinion. He basically stated that for whatever reason, that our decision in terms of whether or not somebody was a citizen is based off of 100% based off of Old English law, which Old English law basically states that if you are born within the realm of the kingdom, you are a subject and you owe no other allegiance but to the king. Now, there's a problem here with that kind of thought process because John Roberts is like, well, that happened, and that is exactly where we got our idea. That's known as jus soli in the Latin terminology, which is J-U-S and then S-O-L-I, which essentially translates to from the soil or right of the soil. Now, there's another legal Latin term called jus sanguinis, which essentially means right of blood. Now, the right of blood means that your parents have to be citizens in order to bring down your citizenship. And just about every single time that America has dealt with this in history, we have always looked at, were you born in America? And were your parents part of America? Because think about this. As of right now, if you're born on foreign soil, you are considered American by nature and has been recognized by our government by the very nature of the fact that America recognizes your parents. America recognizes the fact that your parents are citizens, and thereby, through the right of blood, you are able to be a citizen of the United States. We do not, America does not accept dual citizenship. Legally speaking, they don't. And if you ever have taken the naturalization oath, it literally tells you that you solemnly swear that you give up any allegiances to any other foreign entity across the board. How this SCOTUS passes by all of that. And by the way, that's not just one immigration. There was a revision that was done in terms of immigration. Because if you recall, the Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution says that Congress shall set up a naturalization process. Well, that was part of it. Okay? That was part of it. Was the fact that, hey, if you're coming here and you're going to become an American, yeah, you have to give up anything and everything, all attachments to any other country, period. Now, all of that being the case, there is another piece to this, which is essentially the Latin phrase of domicilium, which essentially means your legal residence or your permanent home. Meaning that this is a place that you're not just traveling, you're not just coming over here to visit. This is where you are considered to be your home. Where do you live? And this is, hence, the challenge. Now, one of the things that kept going back to was this idea that the 14th Amendment, was this big deal that, oh, the 14th, yeah, it actually means, persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That just means, they're subject to our laws. Actually, that's not what it means. Now, in order to understand the phraseology, we have to go to the Congressional Globe, which the Congressional Globe, for anybody that doesn't know, the Congressional Globe was the record of the Senate debates, and the May 30th, 1866 is the de facto authority on how the Senate debates were done. Now here, the guy by the name of Senator Howard from Michigan, Senator Howard was the proponent and helped to write not only the 1866, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which actually defined not subject to any foreign power as a part of it, which is how this, the 14th, was pulled from. And he basically says this. He's like, well, the amendment, Section 1, declaring all persons born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. He goes, I do not propose to say anything on that subject, except that the question of citizenship has already been so fully discussed in this body as to not need further elucidation, in my opinion. This amendment, which I have offered, is simply declaratory of what I regard as the law of the land already, that every person born within the limits of the United States and subject to their jurisdiction is by virtue of both natural law, which would be your birth, and national law, which would be your allegiance, your domicile, your everything, is a citizen of the United States. Now, he clarifies this even further by saying, this will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are, and here it is, it's a comma-separated list, foreigners, aliens who belong to families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States, but will include every other class of persons. Now, that is where they had a problem and discussed it. And here's the thing. This, and I bring you to this text. That was the original text. Here's the text also from that. The problem came in afterward, which was this. Let's see, where was it? Mr. Morrell came up. I think it's Mr. Morrell. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. Sorry. My bad. It's down here. Secretary read the amendment. Mr. Doolittle says, I presume does not intend by this amendment, I presume the honorable senator does not intend by this amendment to include, wait for it, Indians. That's right. And he immediately moved to amend the amendment to inserting the word excluding Indians not taxed. Now, for those of you who have a knowledge of history, you understand that the Americans and the American citizens, even the colonists, recognized the fact that the Indians were not citizens. And in fact, it took an act of Congress in 1924 to actually bring the Indians under the guise of American citizens. They were considered, if they were attached or connected to a tribe, that they were foreign entities within our borders. And that's how they were completely treated. They did treaties with them. They put in trade negotiations and deals with them. They had all kinds of things, legal things that went on that essentially stated in no uncertain terms that the Indians who were here, even though they were born within our border, if they had an allegiance to the tribe, they were not an American citizen. Now, Howard clears this up, and he says, quote, Indians born within the limits of the United States and who maintain their tribal relations are not born subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They are regarded, and always have been in our legislation and jurisprudence, as being quasi-foreign nations. Now this continues. This goes back and forth. And believe me, they bring in everything. They bring in the Chinese, who were populating California at the time. They bring in the idea of gypsies out of Pennsylvania. They bring in, and this is Mr. Cowan, Senator Cowan. He basically says, I'm really desirous to have a legal definition of citizenship in the United States. What does it mean? What is its length and breadth? I would be glad if the honorable senator, meaning Howard, would favor us some such definition. And he continues on and asks about the child of Chinese immigrants in California. Are they a citizen? Is the child of a gypsy born in Pennsylvania a citizen? Now, keep in mind, the gypsies were a band of people just like the Palestinians who never called any place actually home. Okay? Now, he continues on, and he says, if a traveler comes here from Ethiopia, from Australia, from Great Britain, he is entitled to a certain extent to the protection of our laws. For an example, you cannot murder him with impunity because it's a murder to kill him, at the same as it is to kill any other man, citizen or not. You cannot commit assault and battery on the visitor. He's like, he has the right to the protection of our laws, but he is not a citizen in the ordinary acceptation of the word, acceptation of the word. He goes, it's perfectly clear that the mere fact that a man is born in the country has not heretofore entitled him the right to exercise political power. There it is. He's not entitled by virtue of that to be an elector. An elector is one who is chosen by the people to perform that function, just the same as any officer is one chosen by the people to exercise the franchises of an office. So there we go. He's literally saying, no, this is not supposed to be here. And he continues, and you can read through the whole thing. I put a link to the original Congressional Globe with a search on the term subject to the jurisdiction thereof, because that's where this starts. And I'm telling you now, it starts May 30th, 1866. May 30th, 1866 is the date that they discussed this. He talks about a person being entitled to protection, but insofar as the right to hold property, particularly in the right to acquire title to real estate, was concerned, that was a subject entirely within the control of the United States. He also continues and says, aliens and others who acknowledge no allegiance either to the state or to the general government may be limited or circumscribed in that particular. He's basically saying, hey, if they're just here visiting, it doesn't matter where they're from, if they're just here visiting, you can't do it. They cannot be considered citizens. And that's why this phraseology is very important. Now, he keeps going, and he keeps talking about it. And he goes, literally, and the honorable senator of it from Illinois is holding that the word jurisdiction, this is Howard's response a little bit later, as here employed, ought to be construed as to imply a full and complete jurisdiction on the part of the United States, coextensive in all respects with the constitutional power of the United States, whether exercised by Congress, by the executive, or the judicial. That is to say, the name jurisdiction in extent and quality as applies to every existing citizen or every citizen of the United States now. And then he continues and he says, well, certainly, gentlemen, cannot contend that an Indian belonging to a tribe, although born within the limits of a state, is subject to this full and complete jurisdiction. The 14th Amendment was never meant to include those. Now let's go over to Wong Kim Ark. really quick. I think I've proven my point here for the 14th. But let's go over to Wong Kim Ark. Because the Wong Kim Ark case is of a child of Chinese citizens, and this is the important part, who were granted permanent domicile residency here in the United States. That when they left to go back to China to go visit relatives, and upon their return, upon the child's return, he was denied, that's his name, Wong Kim Ark, was denied entry to the United States because according to the law, he was not a citizen, even though he was born here. Now, they sit there and they talk about this, and they say, oh, Wong Kim Ark just shows that anyone can be a citizen, because during the lengthy description, the lengthy reasoning that the justice who wrote the opinion, he kept referring to the old English practice of because they were born on the soil. However, there is a key point that keeps getting missed and overlooked by anyone who sits there and talks about this. And that's this right here. I've highlighted it in blue. So this is the syllabus, the top part that sort of sums this all up. And it says, a child born in the United States of parents of Chinese descent who, at the time of his birth, are subject to the Emperor of China, but have permanent domicile and residence in the United States, and are there carrying on business and are not employed in any diplomatic or official capacity under the Emperor of China, becomes at the time of his birth a citizen of the United States by virtue of the first clause of the 14th Amendment. This is the point. You need to understand this. This is very, very clear. I don't get it as to why so many idiots are out there who do not understand this particular thing. You have to be born here, and you have to have permanent residency here. That is essentially what is going on. In other words, you need jus soli as well as domicilium. You need both in order to be considered a resident, or a citizen of the United States. That's where it comes out. And by the way, this is Justia, the U.S. Supreme Court. This is the case right here. Here's another one. The same thing. The facts of the case, as agreed by the parties, are as follows. Oops, sorry. Back off. Go. The fact that Wong Kim Ark was born in 1873 in the city of San Francisco in the state of California and the United States of America. He was and is a laborer. His father and mother were persons of Chinese descent and subjects of the Emperor of China. They were at the time of his birth, and this is the key, domiciled residents of the United States, having previously established and are still enjoying a permanent domicile and residence therein at San Francisco. Now, they continued to reside and remain in the United States until 1890, when they went back to China. And during all their time here, they had actually achieved recognizable by the federal government, recognizable permanent alien status. That's the key. They're not just coming here, dropping a baby, and running off to China again, which is where we're at today. Now, you want a full accounting of all of what I've talked about, as well as other pieces. Just download the opinion and read Justice Clarence Thomas's absolute ripping of John Roberts for this, because they got it wrong. They absolutely got it wrong. And Clarence Thomas basically says, yeah, this decision isn't going to stand up to the test of time. It just isn't. Because apparently the Supreme Court, based on Roberts's, quote unquote decision, which, by the way, for anybody that says that Roberts, Amy Coney Barrett, obviously the three activists on the court, they all jumped in. But John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, they're two peas in a pod. If John Roberts says, do this, Amy Coney Barrett will be like, yes, sir. And John Roberts is a dick. He is horrible. He does not want to rock the boat at any point in time at all, even if he's wrong. And he is completely wrong on this. So the Supreme Court has decided by this decision that basically, hey, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you have immigrant parents. Doesn't matter if you're here illegally. Doesn't matter if you've come across and are here on a vacation. Makes no difference. You're born here, you're automatically an American citizen, which is absolutely incorrect. 100% across the board incorrect. We as Americans we've never in our entire history just recognized just being born on the soil. Meaning we have some kind of magic dirt that creates you to be a citizen. Yeah, we have not once in our entire history accepted that. Ever. And this idea that Roberts put together, that is essentially, we hearken back to Britain. I'm going to tell you right now, there's this thing that we're coming up on this Saturday that we're celebrating, known as the Declaration of Independence. And that Declaration of Independence is the one who essentially stated that we throw off this idea that we're subjects of the British Crown. We're done with this. We, the people, we are now citizens, not subjects. Now, some people say that this decision was 6-3. Others say it was 5-4. It depends on how you look. But this decision is an absolutely awful decision. It is so awful. And rather than just saying, hey, by the way, Trump can't do this by executive order, but Congress can. Oh, wait a minute. Kavanaugh did. Kavanaugh basically say, hey, this executive order doesn't violate the 14th Amendment, but it does violate the Constitution by itself because executive orders shouldn't be doing this. Even though the executive order was merely a clarification of what the actual and factual and historical references to birthright citizenship actually are. Now, all of that being the case, Donald Trump posted that, hey, this is a win for Xi and the CCP. Yeah, has anybody heard of the birth tourism that was going along? The birth tourism is essentially that Chinese billionaires are paying women to get pregnant, come over here, have the baby, and then bring the baby back and raise them in China. Now, a lot of people are like, well, what does it matter? Somebody being born here in the United States and being a, quote, citizen. There's this thing known as the presidency. The presidency has a clarification that says you must be a natural born citizen. There's no definition as of right now as to what natural born actually means. There's suppositions that natural born basically means that you have to be born by birth here in the United States. You cannot be a naturalized citizen. Well, now we have a bit of a problem. See, almost everything that the founders did, they all knew about foreign influence, and they all abhorred the idea of foreign influence in our politics. And they knew that if there was a way for a foreign entity to gain a foothold into our politics, they could potentially take over the country. And this is exactly why they made that separation between the president and the Congress, where Congress only has to be naturalized and having lived in the country for a certain number of years, especially in the state where they reside, which we've seen is total BS because, people like Adam Schiff have lived in D.C. rather than California. People like, what was his, Fang Bangera Fang Fang? I can't even think of his name. But anyway, he lived in D.C. rather than in California, even though he was a representative of California. But the point here is that there is absolutely no way that the founders would have ever agreed to this at all, because they knew, and that is why they said that the executive of our country needs to be a person of natural birth. Needs to be a natural born American. Yes, thank you, Swalwell. Eric Swalwell. Thankfully, he is no longer in politics. But I'm telling you right now, folks, this is just opening up the door. You want birth tourism? That's what's going to happen here. Now, thankfully, there is already movement afoot to fix this in Congress. And that is a bill that was introduced in the House back in January 21 of 2025. It's called H.R. 569. And it essentially is a bill that will classify and amend Section 301 of the Immigration and Nationality Act to clarify the classes of individuals born in the United States who are nationals and citizens of the United States at birth. This bill clarifies the following. The definition: acknowledging the right of birthright citizenship established by Section 1 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, a person born in the United States shall be considered subject to the jurisdiction of the United States for purposes of subsection A1 if the person is born in the United States of parents. Here they're kicking in the parental. Remember that jus sanguinis, the blood? So right here, one of whom a citizen or national of the United States, an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence in the United States whose residence is in the United States, or an alien with lawful status under the immigration laws performing active service in the armed forces. So basically what this bill, which was introduced back in 2025, is essentially saying that, hey, we're going to acknowledge the fact that at least one of the parents has one of the following conditions. Either they are already a citizen or a naturalized citizen of the United States. They are either an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence, in other words, the Wong Kim Ark situation, or they are an alien with lawful status that is serving in the armed forces. They are here fighting for our country, which essentially would indicate that none of these people, none of those three, would have allegiances to anybody else. In theory, anyway. Now that alone will get us started, but it won't get us past the finish line to put this away. What does need to happen is a constitutional amendment that basically clarifies when we say subject to the jurisdiction thereof, we mean the full and complete political as well as legal jurisdiction of the United States. Or they could just classify it and say, hey, when we say a citizen of the United States born within the states, that means from parents, at least one parent, etc., etc. See, this is not going to go away. Even if we were to pass a congressional law, that congressional law could get repealed at the next congressional session, should the Democrats decide that, okay, we're going to repeal that. So this is why we need a constitutional amendment for this. This is why we need a constitutional amendment. The other angle, which my Whiskey Warriors are already kicking on here, the other angle is that we change the immigration laws and basically say that you can only be in this country for a period of a short period of time, that you cannot be here for years and years and years on end if you are a foreign national, and which this one would cause the left to have all kinds of problems. But and you cannot be pregnant. If you're a woman, you cannot be pregnant until you come in here to allow you to come into the country. Well, there you go. Those are our choices. Personally, I think either way, it's going to be a statute that's going to have to be written. And this is just absolutely crazy. And this is up to Congress to fix. But this is the thing, is that the president and the Congress have been kicking this can down the road, just like they've done with Social Security and welfare and all this other crap. See, they don't really care because it doesn't matter to them. But as of right now, folks, this is a serious problem. We are going to completely lose our country. As of right now, you remember I discussed this whole idea of the Chinese birthing mills that were going on. See, we already have Chinese nationals that have been born that are coming up to their 18th birthday here that are considered, according to the Supreme Court of the United States, are already considered to be U.S. citizens just because they happen to be born in this soil. They've never lived here. They don't know our customs. They don't know our laws. They were raised back in China. And yet, they can come here and they have all of the rights of a citizen. They can vote. They can run for the presidency because they are, quote unquote, a natural born citizen, according to the justices. Amy Coney Barrett, John Roberts, and the three activists. Folks, this is a mess. This is a complete and utter mess. The history demonstrates and clearly demonstrates that that was not the intent of the 14th Amendment, to have aliens and foreigners come here and be able to just do whatever. That they can just drop a baby and that baby is automatically a United States citizen. That isn't the point. Just think if the British had done that between the time that we gained our independence, even through the War of 1812, just think if the British had done that. They just said, hey, you know what? We're going to send our people over there. They're going to become citizens just by merely dropping a baby. Now, there are so many examples of how this would work in practicality. For an example, I live on a farm. I have a neighbor who has a cow. That cow is pregnant. That cow breaks through my fence, my border, drops the calf on my property. Based off of this decision, by virtue of that calf being born on my property, that calf now belongs to me. My property. That isn't how things work. The cow and the calf belong to my neighbor. They don't belong to me. I don't have any claim to them. By the way, my neighbor would actually, by law, would actually be responsible for fixing my freaking fence. This is a ridiculous decision, and it's all because John Roberts does not have the balls to basically say, hey, all of you DACA folks, yeah, we've been lying to you all this year. All of those people who have been here for 18 years, like the Haitians who have had kids and so on and so forth, all of you people, yep, every single one of you, you guys are not citizens, you're out of here. He has no balls to actually say the law is the law, and this is how it works. Is it right? That's for you to decide, meaning the American people. This is ridiculous. This is totally and utterly ridiculous. And by the way, it flies in the face of every single law that we have had in terms of immigration and naturalization. Because as of right now, if they come in, whether they're illegal or not, their baby drops here on our soil, that baby now is an American citizen, regardless. Totally regardless. This is insane. Totally and completely insane. And I've got one last story to tell you, and this one is really short. But there's now a study out. You know, all these people who have been complaining about rent and home prices going up and everything else. Well, the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas has revealed that the illegal immigration under the Biden government resulted in these higher home prices and rental costs. Yep. So the paper that got put out analyzed the impact of illegal immigration between 2021 and 2024. Now, the paper, by the way, is a preliminary draft, but one of the first comprehensive efforts in order to determine the economic impact of the illegal immigration that was done under the Biden government. So not only do we have American citizens running around in diapers right now, which shouldn't be, we now know, based on this paper and the data that it mined, that the illegal immigration problem caused all kinds of issues in our housing and rent areas. And you think this is going to go away because of this birthright citizenship case? It's not. Congress needs to act. Congress needs to act. And they need to do it now. They also need to pass that SAVE Act. Because think about this. Would you want a Chinese national coming here claiming that they're a U.S. citizen, even though they've never been a part of the United States, and is able to come in, and we're talking about millions of these babies, coming in and voting for a president or a congressman or a senator or something like that? They've never been a part of our culture. Nothing. This is ridiculous. Alrighty, folks, that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are signed up and signed in, make sure that you search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget to hit those thumbs up, thumbs down, or in the case of 3 Chevy, a thumb sideways or maybe at an angle across all my platforms, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook, or, of course, the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Whiskey Wednesday. I have no pet of the week. Get it in. We'll see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.